Hello, church family, and welcome back to another episode of On the Avenue. Here at Wheeler Avenue, this year we declared that this is the year of amazing things. God has done and continues to do amazing things in each and every one of our lives. In today's episode, we have some amazing testimonies from members right here in our congregation. Let's take a listen.
My testimony. I was about 22, well, maybe about 24. I got diagnosed with testicular cancer. At the time, it was very devastating, being very young, like I couldn't understand it. I had to come home and tell my wife. I didn't want to tell anyone. They told me that I was not going to be able to have any more children. So it was very emotional, very not understanding why, as a young man, why is this happening to me? I was leading worship at a very large church in Chicago, Family Harvest, and I had to stand before the people with all of this on my mind, and someone came up to me and said, "What did the doctor say?" And I began to tell the prayer warrior what the doctor said. So she said, "We're going to pray against all of those things, and we're only going to say the word of God." That was helpful, and I was very thankful for that. But I still had to wrestle inside of what is my life going to be. I had a son who was not 2 yet, and just trying to rationalize, what is this life going to be? So I had my first surgery. I began to deal with the different treatments that they wanted me to deal with. I started going to Bishop Jake's Manpower. I would take a lot of men, and it began to strengthen me. I began to speak the word. I began to pray over myself. And before you know it, my wife was pregnant with our second child. So
How long were you battling cancer before that?
I was battling with cancer for about 2 years before that happened. And it's almost like a fog. I remember, but I don't remember, because I didn't let that be my life. I was going through it, but I was determined not to focus or let that be my identity. I didn't want that to be, oh, that's the guy that's battling with cancer. And so I always kept myself up. I cut my hair way before I had to do anything. I wanted to make sure that I was going to look normal, not look any kind of way that I was sick. And so I began to press on. Things got better for me. We moved to Dallas to be with Bishop Jakes. It was different. I didn't have any support. My wife and I, my 2 children, and the Lord began to bless. We were very active in the church, ministering with the hospital ministry, and just being out evangelizing in the street. And it was just an awesome time. And I had to have one more surgery after that. And I finally had my last surgery about 14 years ago, maybe 14, 15, I'm not sure. And the Lord has really blessed, just from that. And when I'm thinking that that's over, Harvey hits. And we lost everything on the first floor. Cars, one of my cars, and my neighbor's car, because we never flood. And it was difficult. Now this is later on, and my children are now grown. My little brother moved here, and he was able to come and get us and take us to higher ground where he lived. That was even more devastating, because now I'm dealing with my wife, the younger daughter, and a little dog. So trying to make sense out of all of this, we went to stay with my brother, and I told my wife, we're going to church. We went to Walmart and bought clothes. We got those clothes, we put them on. I never liked coming to church without being presentable. You know, you raised in church as a young Black man, you always dress and be presentable before the church. And I had some khakis and a polo shirt from Walmart. Not that it's a bad thing. And some, I don't know what type of gym shoes I had on, but I came to church humble, crying before the Lord, thankful. I wasn't sad, I was thankful, because I still had a home, I just didn't know what was going to go on. Only to find out that my mortgage company forgot to pay my insurance. So we had to wait a long time before we were able to get the house started. But once the water went down, my children gathered people from out of state to come to my house and rip the walls out, rip all the wood floors up. And to see them buy tools and take care of Daddy was amazing.
Did you know they were doing that?
My daughter just called me and said, Dad, we're going to come and we're going to take care of this for you. We know you're struggling. Man, I'm just thankful that I have children that were raised in the Word and love their father. So they came and did all of this. We emptied out the whole house. My wife and I went and back to my brother's house. We went to work, and I got a call at work. My wife had passed out at work because of the pressure. The church had made it a lot easy for us. We couldn't get to money at all at the time. And as big as this church is, Pastor made sure that my family was okay. A lot of times you go to a church, you don't want to ask for anything. And I didn't have to ask. The church called me. They heard that I was going through it, and they made sure we was okay. We didn't have to worry about food. We didn't have to concern ourselves about buying a refrigerator. They made sure we were okay. And we were eternally grateful. A lot of times you think about all of these things that you go through in life, and you ask why. But if I can tell anybody anything about all that I've gone through, I honestly look to the hills from which cometh my help. I didn't explain anything to anybody about cancer. I kept it to myself. I had faith into myself because people will kill you off the minute you tell them something. And I was not going to give anybody the opportunity to kill me off and start speaking into my life. So I kept it to myself, and I kept myself looking nice. Going through the flood, I didn't even have the right clothes to sing in the choir. I showed up at church one Sunday, and Minister Leon and Sharita, president of Sanctuary, told me, "You're gonna sing anyway." And I was the only one without my uniform. And I'm a Pentecostal boy through and through, man, and Pastor knows I probably danced all over that pulpit.
So my name is Hugh Tillman. Some people say Deacon Tillman. I am from Austin, Texas originally. I've been here in Houston, since '05. So I'm gonna always be an Austinite and miss home, but Houston is now home for me. And love this church. I've grown to love the city a little bit more. But Houston is new, but Austin will always be home. Let's see. Married to an amazing, awesome woman, Deaconess Karen Tillman. We've been married for about 6.5 years, 3 kids. We are a blended family, and my son Mitchell is 22, Christian is 18, and Faith is 15, going on 30. And we are hard workers, business owners, new homeowners. Just good, regular old American family.
Tell us your testimony about your home.
Wow. So, man, I get so excited. My wife and I sit in the bed and we'll look up at the ceiling like, God, can you believe this? Can you believe this actually happened? So we actually, before we were even engaged, just dating, found this house in Siena. We live in Siena. Stood on the property together, hand in hand, and asked the Lord, if it is your will, this is us. This is the house, right? This was forever ago, 8 years ago, something like that, 7 years ago, a little over, 7.5 years ago. Didn't get the house. Probably weren't ready for it. And so time goes on. We get to a place in space where we're ready to move. We move out of the house that she had purchased. And instead of building or buying at the time, we decided to build 3 townhouses in Heritage Park, rent 2 of them as investment properties, and live in the third one, right? So we did that. Fast forward a little bit more. We did that specifically for our children, because we wanted each of them to have a house. You know, things change, you pivot, the market was hot. We were like, nah, babe, let's sell these. So that was the time when we started looking for homes again. That house was not a house that was available to us at the time. So we looked at potentially building. Things were crazy at the time. The market was going nuts. Things were expensive. Housing prices were through the roof. And so we're like, okay, maybe we need to look at houses that are already, existing, and then look to remodel. Started looking at houses, one after the other, and we would find something that we thought we liked, settle. It would be a kind of a settling house, and it would fall through. Lord, what are you trying to say to us, God? The house that we're in now, still not quite there. Now, as part of the testimony, I remember we used to drive by this house all the time. And one day I drove by and met the gentleman that owned it. And I was like, oh, Mom, let the window down. Oh, me and my wife love this house. We looked at it years ago, decided not to bid on it. He's like, oh, yeah. You want to come on in? Come on in. And my wife always talks about, how do you get people, just random people to let you come in the house, right? You're just this random black guy. And so walked through the house. It was beautiful, beautifully appointed and decorated. It actually added a guest house to the property. And I was just like, golly, this is awesome. Went back, told my wife, moved on. Still thinking about looking at houses. We're looking at every kind of house you can imagine.
How long were you looking?
Oh, for good Lord, probably about 2 years that whole time. It got to a point where we started getting frustrated, and you're praying to God and like, Lord, speak, speak. We found this one house, nice size, on the water, our style, the whole deal. The seller's agent, the name, last name Tillman. Oh, Lord, that's you speaking. Oh, God, thank you, Jesus. Oh, we hear you, Lord. And God is like, no, this is not the house. So we made a full price offer for that house. They turned it down. Full price, turned it down. So, you know, God opens doors sometimes, and sometimes he closes them and nails them shut. So nailed that one shut. So now we're just devastated. So we looked for some other houses. We found a house right across the street from our house. I'm fast forwarding. Put a bid in on that. And at the time, so let me back up. So before we did that, we had engaged the people that own this house. And they were like, hey, you know, if you ever, we're going to be empty nesters. If you ever think about moving, we'd consider selling. So we couldn't believe it. It's like, this is amazing, you know. And for whatever the reason, all of the discussions back and forth, the wife decided not to sell. So now we're just devastated, right? We prayed years ago and it's fallen through, and we are just looking back on the hunt. And now we just, whatever we can find. House right across the street. Our speed, good size, all the rooms we need, on the water. My wife wanted to be on the water. And it was a tough time because my mom had just passed away. 10 days before Christmas, 2021, just passed away. And we said, don't be having us, you know, go through all this rigmarole if you're not serious about selling. And, you know, I'm in the midst of planning a homegoing celebration for my mom. Oh, no, they're serious. Okay. Put an offer in. They didn't take it. So we're, you know, I'm particularly devastated and upset because of how things turned out. We went back, offered $100,000 more than what we originally offered. Didn't take it. So now we're just like, Lord, what is going on? And at the time when we were over there at the house, specifically the people that we bought for, he happened to just drive up, right? And I walked over and I was like, hey, you know, we're looking at this house. He's like, oh yeah, you know, I understand it. We're glad to know that you guys are looking because we're just not at the place where we want to sell. And so now my wife and I are just like, what is going on? Lord, what are you trying to say? So now we've looked at building, that's going to be too expensive. We looked at houses, house after house after house. God's just shutting them all down. And I remember vividly the following year, earlier last year, coming home from work, look down at my phone, and I get a random text, and it's from Dennis. I think we're ready to sell. I almost wrecked my car. I was like, what? You got to be kidding, right? So told the wife, we're excited, we're ecstatic. This is amazing, awesome. The testimony is not necessarily in that as much as it is in the process to actually get the house. So now we've agreed, right? They've agreed to do a no agent deal, saves them a bunch of money, saves us. We're going through the process. And so we've been working with our loan guy. We've been working with him for years, right? Years. And he's probably thinking these people are never gonna buy a house. As we're going through the process, there are certain things when you have the underwriters, right? For people that have bought homes, no, when you have the underwriters looking at things, there are certain things that can just shut a process down where you got to go get more documentation or whatever. And then there are things that'll just shut it down completely where it just stops. And I remember Dwayne telling us, one night he was like, there have been 5 things that should have shut this whole process down. He's like, I don't know who y'all been praying to. He said, but they're just blowing them off. They're just not worried about it. One of which was me being in a job for only 6 months at the time, right? On a previous house we looked at, I'd been on a job almost 1.5 years, which wasn't enough time, right? 2 years is what they were saying. I'd been on this job 6 months. I don't worry about it. And so he's like, what? Something else that I had done with regard to taxes, something I forgot to file about some of our rental properties and some of the income. That's going to shut everything down typically. Underwriter was like, we can see they've been putting the income in the bank statement. We see it. It's real. Don't worry about it. He's like, what? So there's all these different things, right? So the testimony is that when God has something that's for you, it's for you. There is no way anyone can shut it down. There's no stopping it. And so we are so grateful and we're so thankful, and we made a pact that our home was going to be a home of ministry, right? And that's what we've decided. And for God to move in an amazing way to allow us to get this house that we're in, it's unbelievable. And then a member of our church here in Wheeler, who's an amazing designer, Chandra Harris, she was the one that did all the design when we did the remodel. The remodel was about a 5-month project, and it turned out great. And so we pinch ourselves every morning because all the things had to line up. Even Dennis and his wife, Ashley, who we bought the house from, when I took my wife back to look at the house, because she had not seen it, I'd been there twice. You know you're dealing with the right people when you see scripture on the wall and in frames perched on tables. And there were just things about the house that we both wanted, right? I'd always wanted 2 islands in my house. She'd always wanted a 45-degree fireplace. She'd always wanted a huge rotunda, like little things like that. But the sacrifice that we made as a family for 2 years, when we moved out of one space into a much smaller space, my son Mitchell was having to come over and sleep on the couch, and my wife was living out of 5 closets, and I had clothes in the garage, and it was uncomfortable, but we had a vision and we knew God was going to provide. And to think about where we came from and the time that it took. So from the time that we prayed on that property to the time that we moved in, it's about 7 years, number of completion. God has just been in this thing all the way. And it's just exciting to talk about. So when Pastor came and did the house blessing, and I mentioned this to the guests, it gets you excited about how good God is and that He is faithful and He does indeed answer prayer. He has answered prayer, and we just we're amazed. We're truly amazed. It is the year of amazing things, and we just continue to be amazed. And the interesting thing about it, Amber, is because when God has come through before you in the past, how dare us think that He's not going to come through again? And yet you get in that place and space where you start questioning and, golly, I thought that was it, God. The agent's name was Tillman. I thought you were speaking to us, right? And it just, sometimes you have to get out of His way and just let Him work His plan, right? Yeah. Are you going to settle? Yeah. And he did. The original plan at the time was the guest house that's on the property now was going to be the place where I was going to move my parents. And then when my mom passed away, that all changed, because then my dad started to get sick more often and needed round-the-clock care. So we had to move into an assisted living facility. So then those plans that you had, they changed, but then it still works, because that's a place and space where we allow, our kids can go over and have fun. We turned the whole first floor into a gym. We're both into fitness, and we've had visions of having other couples over and friends and family to do workouts. And so it's worked out from that perspective. And then when, family from out of town and out of state come and visit, they're over there. It's just, you have this vision for what it's going to be, and it ends up being something else. It's just as good, So it's almost unbelievable. It's almost unbelievable when we think about everything we've been through, but it's the time. And sometimes God makes you wait. And I'm impatient. I am my mother's child. I want what I want right away. And we had to wait a long time. But oh my God, it has been beyond worth it. Even for our kids who sacrificed too, to see them over the week, be able to go up to their own rooms and just, I think about my son who slept on the couch for 2 years. Now he's got his huge comfortable bed in his room, and that's his space. And it's just, it's amazing. It's truly amazing.
My prayer is that you've been encouraged by listening to these amazing testimonies and continue to believe God to do amazing things in your life. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Wheeler Avenue BC, and I'll see you next time on the Avenue. Bye.